Oppose the theory, life can get difficult.
I was warned when I wrote my first paper, which discussed a difference between the climate models and some numbers that I was looking at for the tropics alone, that it would be very difficult and that my funding would probably be cut. And in fact, it has been cut.
Did you believe that at the time?
No, I didn't. I thought that the system was so straightforward and honest that bringing in a new idea and a new perspective into the whole thing, which I thought I did in 1979, would actually be considered to be a positive thing, and that people would like to look at both sides of the argument and then have a debate.
But of course, in some ways, one could say it's been successful in terms of raising funds, that by going around saying there's a crisis around the corner, people are talking about putting in more funds and so forth. And maybe it's worked.
Perhaps it's worked, perhaps I was wrong. But I think that it's going to backfire.
Richard Lindzen has recently said that this whole area of global warming has sort of become a new McCarthyism. And if you don't jump on the environmental bandwagon to stop the inevitable warming that the Earth is going to undergo, that you're going to be ostracized from the scientific community and from everybody else's community, because it's not fashionable to disagree with the environmentalists these days.
I don't know. Neither of us can answer. Of course not. We can't answer that question.
People who have a point of view which may not be the politically acceptable point of view are going to have problems. That's not surprising. I have had experience with editors where I have asked questions as to why something was rejected. And this has occurred with more than one journal, and have been told that your papers are held to a higher standard of review than others. I've been literally told that.
For what grounds did they hold?
Because of what they say. I mean, that's fine, okay, if they want to be that way. I'm a big boy. I've been fairly successful. I know that I would have been more successful probably if I'd say the world's coming to an end, but I just can't quite bring myself to do that.
Of course, it's not only been the scientists. The media also benefits from a good disaster story.
Storms, cyclones, drought, high winds and floods. A foretaste of global warming, a change in the climate caused by man's pollution of the planet.
The climate is okay does not usually make the headlines. And the best prophets of doom are the ones filmed most.
The rate of change is so fast that I don't hesitate to call that kind of change potentially catastrophic for ecosystems.
There are statements made of such overt unrealism that I feel embarrassed. I feel it discredits my science. And I think there could arise problems where one will need to depend on scientific judgment. And by ruining our credibility now, we leave society with a diminished resource of some importance.
Well, of course you always tell the truth, but how many of us ever get on the evening news in more than 23 seconds? Can you give the whole story in 23 seconds? You have to selectively give bits of information.
And if the scientists and the media have connived to make a good story, the politicians have not been slow to see the advantages to them.
We would be taking a great risk with future generations if, having received this early warning, we did nothing about it, or just took the attitude, well, it'll see me out.
Why do you think it is that politicians, and indeed Congress, have been convinced that there has been global warming?
I don't know that they've been convinced, but their business is to be responsive to their constituents, and their constituents are convinced. It would certainly not be in their best political interest to not act convinced, would it? So the people want to believe this, and politicians have to respond somewhat to the people's wants. They can't say to their constituents, you are stupid, can they?
It may not quite add up to a conspiracy, but certainly a coalition of interests has promoted the greenhouse theory. Scientists have needed funds, the media a story, and governments a worthy cause. And beyond that, is it the millennium that encourages notions of an apocalypse? Or simply that in a world without belief, we need a catastrophe to give us something to believe in? Where for once, in a battle between nature and humankind, we can line up on the side of good against the forces of evil.
I mean, this thing is being fought with dull knives and Zipcos. I don't know if you realize that. There's a lot of blood on this thing.
In what way?
People hate each other about this issue. You haven't noticed that? You ever seen a nastier scientific issue?
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I guess because people passionately feel that it's a battle between good and evil.
If the consequences of the greenhouse theory did not extend beyond a moral crusade, it could be left to those with a religious turn of mind. But it cannot be so lightly ignored.
Would you march down the road toward a policy which people have rightfully said requires an economic restructuring of the world, knowing that the world was behaving opposite to what the basis for that policy said?